Good morning, Dr. Clendenning. How are you?
I am good, the Michael Libercci. How are you this morning, man?
Outstanding. It is still platinum white here in New Jersey from the snow. However, we should be getting a little bit of a melt off. Even my kids are like, when is the snow going? They're not in their lifetime. They're not used to seeing snow linger for almost 2 weeks. I realize in the rest of the world, that's a part of the plan, but it's not usually here. So
Yeah,
how's it where you
we're
are?
well, we're everybody's bitching about the lack of snow. We've only got like 18 inches total. Everybody's worried about and I know it's definitely that it's much worse in the West right now, but they're worried about a drought this summer here, where I am in the in northern Minnesota, and where my family is, and everybody where we came from in the West. They're like 50% snowpack, which for February is insanely low. If they don't start getting buried in snow, there's going to be some massive water restrictions this summer. It's a big deal when you don't get the snow. People are like, oh yeah, we don't have snow down on the Front Range. Great, it's all nice and warm and happy for me. But if the mountains are not feet deep in snow, you're not playing at the water park this summer. That stuff's just not going to happen. So it's
That's our
we're and this is one of those years. You read the Farmer's Almanac, you look at a lot of different things. This is one of those years that, man, don't plan on planting your garden in May. Just don't, because you're going to get 3 feet of snow on Mother's Day. That's how that goes historically. Ever since I was little, in the West, there was just, man, don't count your chickens yet. So there's a good chance you won't have as much water this summer as you wish you had for irrigation. It's going to be a problem for farmers, but you're likely to still get a pretty gnarly one in the spring. We've seen a lot of those, so I think we're still going to be okay, and could just be a really wet, rainy spring too, which would be good too.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that leads me to my point for today, which is let's talk about this phenomenon called Stoicism. And a friend of mine, nickname is the Panther. He's awesome. This dude is a pretty superstar in the world out there. He'll remain nameless on purpose, but he's an awesome guy. And he heard our show on the Marcus Aurelius bit, and he pointed me in the direction of Stoicism. Said he listens to this other guy's podcast. I forgot his name, but I'll bring it up maybe later in the broadcast. Who's apparently pretty good dude. I checked some of this stuff out. It's really good, and I dove deep because when you hear like a Stoicism, I don't know. My first thing goes to like almost like kind of this like Russian Stalin-y sort of
I'd buy that.
feel, like I don't know. It's like this. I feel like Stoicism doesn't feel light to me. It feels heavy. I don't know why. I'm just giving you my first reaction, but I couldn't be further from the truth. Stoicism really is basically, I got it written down here. It's kind of living well no matter what life throws at you. And it's about what you can, I guess it's just a name to a face, right? It's about what you can control and what you can't control. And if you get hit with some good fortune, you get hit with some negative stuff, I'm going to paraphrase, obviously, you Stoicism experts out there. You basically, what can I control? What can I not control? Right? What can I do that's in my power? And then I have to practice releasing what's not in my power and still try to hold on to what's in my power. And if I sit there and I obsess about what's not in my power, then I'm sabotaging what is in my power, right? And I feel like all of us in life, business, rocky economic climates, we need to be rooted in some of this. And rocky political climates, we need to be rooted in some of this. What can I control? Well, let's
Hmm.
see. I can control how I react. I can control when I react. I can control when I speak, when I don't speak, what I worry about, what I don't worry about, what I'm focused on, what I'm letting influence me, what I'm influencing. There's a lot out there. So as I go down that babble, what do you What are you feeling when I'm talking about Stalin, not Stalin stoicism?
Well, I've got a good friend of mine in Alaska that is a very and has been labeled, mind you, a very stoic individual.
Huh?
He is dude's a monster. He's an ex smoke jumper, and I mean he's a giant of a guy. Like just makes me look like a 4-year-old anytime we're out dinking around doing stuff. We'd go fishing in the river, and his waders, we got chest waders on, right, and you're going down the river, and he's up to about mid rib. Mid rib on
Uh,
him is about eyeball deep on me.
Wow.
So like he's just wading through the river. He's like, come on, you'll make it. I'm like, no, I need some floaty fins to get through there, man. But that's just a basic. But I look at this stoicism movement a little bit differently because Jason, he was always talked about being very stoic, right? He was just very singular. It seemed singular emotion, and for people around him that can either react really happy to something cool that's going on or really aggressively and angry to things that are going on. He was very even keel, right? So he was just kind of in the middle. So I don't look there's a couple different ways to look at this. I look at the Stoicism movement not so much as a lack of emotion, like just making yourself Spock from Star Trek, right? That's not what it is. It is the absence of overreaction, right? It's the absence of overreaction. So whereas somebody
That is Spock from Star Trek. Doesn't he have human side too?
He does, but he has chosen to embrace his Vulcan side. Everybody's like, wow, Jake is a nerd. Yeah, a little bit. He's chosen to embrace his human side and close off to most emotion, right? And
Uh-huh.
just close off to it. And therefore, Spock appears very stoic and very singular. And to me, I think it's the absence of overreaction. So, like, if something really bad happens to you, and you're the vast majority of us, like, there was a time when I was in construction, I was championship tool thrower. I'd get mad at something, and I would throw tools through walls and toss them off at rooftops, and just I'd throw a fit. Right, that's massive reaction.
Mhm.
Um, Same thing when something really cool would happen. You'd celebrate it overly. It'd be overt in what you're doing. The stoicism piece is just staying more even keel. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to assess the situation differently. You're taking stock, you're evaluating what's going on in the moment, and it particularly benefits you when the negative stuff comes up, right? That's when it's going to, because that's when we tend to overreact. That's when we tend to throw stuff, and we tend to get just way out of let our emotions govern us, and sometimes we make even more rash, worse decisions in that particular moment. So
Okay.
that's how as I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to this movement around stoicism. It's not just there's a boy who painted that. There's a painting of two farmers, guy standing there in overalls with his pitchfork, and his wife is standing next to him, no emotion on their face. And that painting has been labeled as a very stoic representation of the time. And I got to think about who painted that. Everybody's seen it. I mean, everybody knows which one I'm talking about. And the reality is, at that time, in photographs and in paintings, people didn't smile. That's just how it was. You didn't stand there for an hour, making this big old toothy grin. You just stood there. And so the representation that the artist brought forward appeared to be very stoic. And sometimes being very stoic can be taken as lack of empathy. A lot, outwardly, people are going to see it differently. And yet, it's it's okay, right? It's totally okay to be that, because you have to look at this. If I'm looking at Mike, and Mike's going to be and Mike is somewhat of a stoic individual a lot of times, right? If Mike is thinking,
By design.
yeah, well, yeah, I would say that's true. I would say that's true. Um, and there's just times that, like, you can't read him. He's got a certain poker face about him at certain times, and it's because you can tell he's thinking. He's a very visual person. I'll see him kind of go blank in the face, and he'll start looking up and just looking around. He's trying to look for something, that he's looking for a response, looking for an answer. It doesn't mean that he's emotionless or he's not paying attention. He's just, it's the absence of a reaction to the thing that's going on in that moment.
You're pretty right. It started from in my youth, when you're in a lot of instability in your environment. And I'm not necessarily talking about my home life, but just people I hung out with and the situations that I started witnessing, the people I chose to associate with as a young man. Yeah, you sort of had to. You didn't have to do anything, but in order to move efficiently through some situations, you had to have that. Okay, I'm not going to say, oh my God, what am I looking at here? Or how did I find myself here? I need to be able to act like I'm somewhat okay with what I'm looking at. I don't necessarily agree with what's happening around me. How can I get the hell out of here without making a giant ruckus and without judging anybody at the same time? Because I do know that people just make bad decisions or worse decisions in the moment, and we all move on. Because at some point, I'm going to make that bad decision myself. Maybe not to that level, but I'm going to make that bad decision myself, right? So that, and then as I started to move along the path of life, I started realizing, and I'm a little bit of a cynical individual, I started realizing that a lot of people just interact with you so they can have you hear them. They're not necessarily listening to you. They just want to get your attention so they can get yours. Give you their attention so they can get yours. And, you move down the line and you start looking at people for what they are from a perspective of where you came from, an uneducated perspective or a worldly or non-worldly perspective. And that's how that was born. And then as I get into the service industry as a young man, helping people, you start realizing, you need to listen. And then you also need to not make it about you. So you have this origin, mid journey, and then you have this professional skill that you duplicate all day long. It does develop this layer of stoicism, right? Because if you're bringing me on to help you, and all of a sudden I'm making it more about me, and maybe in some people's lives or some people's businesses or practices that may work to transform and help others, it doesn't work in mine, right? Less me, more you, right? Just period. Less me, more you. So that stoicism or that stoic look to me, that's where that came from. And I'm every time I try to erase that, I get sort of burned, and I'm not so good at changing, especially at this point in my life. I'm not. I'm good at learning and adapting, but I'm not so good at changing. I'm realizing the bandwidth for change is a lot shorter now. I don't
I
know.
think that's valid. I think
I don't
that
know why
absolutely
though.
happens.
Why do you think that is? Like, let's sidebar a second. Why do you think like every decade you're older, the bandwidth of change? I'm not talking about being like an old stubborn. I'm just talking about the capacity to not think about all the other stuff. Like, what happens? Like, what are we doing? What the hell
Comfort.
happened?
We get comfortable in learned behaviors.
Mm,
Plain and simple. We can go back
yeah.
to I can beat the comfort drum up one side and down the other. Just beat it like a redheaded stepchild kind of thing, because that's the reason. Mike, plain and simple, is we get comfortable in, this is where I am. I'm totally good with it. And to get to change behavior, whatever the behavior may be, is uncomfortable. As humans, we don't like that. Like, we
Mhm.
don't we move towards comfort, and we have learned this behavior at whatever age it's going to be. Even the reality is, pick your average 2 or 3 year old. they don't like changing their behavior either. They're just a little more overtly vocal about it. When go ahead, tell a 2 year old no. Um, Gosh, do they love that word? Absolutely great. I mean, you'll see them. They melt. They come apart because the behavior they want to do, you're telling them they can't do. So it's not that it's more difficult now than it was when you were two. We are just conditioned as human beings to avoid discomfort, plain and simple.
Mm.
So that's where I'd go with that. So I want to give you another example of this stoicism piece as I'm watching it. So we're in an Olympic year. I love watching the Olympics. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. I love it. I kicked the Super Bowl to the curb.
Oh, that
Don't
Super Bowl
didn't
sucked.
even
I mean,
wouldn't even matter.
congratulations, Seattle, but that Super Bowl, it was so Seattle just
Yeah, wasn't
it
even there.
sucked.
Didn't care. Wasn't even my thing because the Olympics are on. The Olympics are on. Like that's one of those, man. I absolutely love it. So I want to talk about stoicism. So last night I'm watching the semifinal match of curling. So by no stretch is this a dramatic, exciting sport. Curling. Yep.
Time out. Yeah. You turned a football game off to watch a bunch of people play ice shuffleboard.
Yeah, I didn't even turn the football game on. I'm like, screw it. And so I did. I was watching the semifinal match last night of curling, and I'm watching Italy and the US, right? I'm right now the Olympics is on. That's what's on. To me, that's what's on. There's nothing else. So I'm watching curling.
All right.
Um, because I want to support the U.S. team. I want to support these athletes, plain and simple. I want to watch. I want to know this is what I'm doing.
All
Um,
right.
and there's the U.S. team. They're from Duluth, Minnesota. That's not that far from where I currently am. I'm like, that's pretty
People
cool.
that make people that make the pants, right? Duluth Trading Company. No, no sponsor.
Yep, no sponsor. Yeah, Duluth Trading Company. I don't know if that's where that company was forged. So I'm watching this game, and they're talking about it's a mixed match. So it's one man, one woman, and U.S. is facing Italy, and the Italian female that's on this team, and I'm going to butcher her name. So I'll get phone calls. Go ahead, put it in there. I understand that. I respect it. I believe the name is Stefani Cristiani is her name. I believe that's her name. She is so thin, dark haired, like probably most Italian women are. She was so stoic, and they're the reigning world champions. They're the defending Olympic gold medalists. Steely face on this individual, the focus of what she had going on, and I want to emphasize that the focus could easily be mistaken as stoicism. She didn't get worked up about a great shot, she didn't get worked up about a missed shot, plain and
Okay.
simple. Just even keel and focused on the game, focused on the match, and they did lose. Italy did lose. U.S. advances to the gold medal match, and it was awesome. The U.S. came uncorked when they won. Right, the absolutely just huge celebration. Great, awesome, cool for you. And her face, Mike's kind of got it now. Her face did not change through the entire match. I was watching this and I'm thinking about this, and it's ironic that we're talking about this. It didn't change from the time that when she was literally pushing a stone down the ice in this absolute focus to the end of the match when she was congratulating the U.S. team. She was very even keel. You could the tonus of her skin didn't change. She didn't get red. She didn't get flustered. She had managed to stay even keel, which shows a degree of professionalism in a sport. And I can look at this from, we've been watching, aside from we saw Lindsey Vaughn take a horrific crash because she wrecked into a gate and then she broke a leg that she'd previously torn an ACL, riddled with injuries. And I think that's the end of Lindsey's downhill career at this point. But she's been amazing. Before she makes a run, if you ever watch and you're watching these athletes, and I'm saying just pick an athlete, watch them. Watch the focus they have as they're coming into their event. They are emotionless. They are working through, and Mike does a lot of this with visualization. You watch the downhill skiers, and they're at the top of the gate with their eyes closed, and you can see them. They're doing this, they're moving, they're visualizing the entire run, and their face is not, yeah, wow,
Right.
they're so there's the appearance of a lack of emotion, but it's just a state, right? They're in a state of such focus that they're able to maintain that. I look at some of the big air snowboarders, which is a ton of fun to watch. The women's big air snowboard I love watching, because these chicks are doing things like my wife is hysterical. We're watching it and she is terrified for them. Like they get up on the top of the ramp, she's like, "No, no," and she wouldn't even get up to the top of that hill. And these girls are just like, "Yep," and they'll hop on their board and they're just ripping down the hill, top speeds, and they're flying through the air, 110, 120 feet, doing 1080s and axles, and all these crazy grabs at such a high degree. But you look at them at the top of the hill, stone, just steely faced. And so that's what I want to point out, is sometimes being stoic is misinterpreted around focus, or focus is misinterpreted for being stoic.
I would like to replay this episode for my oldest son. He is so stoic. Everyone is always teasing him like, "Hey man, do you smile?" Like, especially in baseball, he is so straight faced. And it is hard to pry anything out of that kid. He doesn't speak. He is almost too closed off sometimes, from an outwardly win people over perspective. But I mean, I love him. I don't think he's too anything. Obviously, he's
But
my
in
kid.
the moment of focus, it's not what it's about. You're not trying to win people over. If he is focused on the game, he's focused on what he's doing at hand. It's not about shutting that off to engage somebody else to go, "Hey man, yeah, Mike, I'm having a great day. Hey, just give me a second here," and then trying to shut it back off.
So here's a coaching point on for him. So he's trying to make certain teams in baseball, and he's gotten some advice saying, "Hey, look, if you want to open yourself up to better opportunities, at some point you need to show yourself a little bit. I understand who you are because now I've been working with you for a little while. But if you're trying to get into on a high school team, or make a certain team, or meet a certain group of coaches, there's like a temperament that you need to show, fake it a little bit till you make it, where you're not that way all the time for
Mm-hmm.
barrier breaking purposes, unless you're just an absolute stud." And he's not absolute stud. Like, I'm not overselling my kid. Like, if you're getting up there and you're just mashing baseballs, or you're that ball is flying out of your arm and it's at 80, 85, 90 miles an hour consistently, or your curveball's got an east-west sweep like nobody's business, right? Like, whatever. It's not that way. So there's a coaching point for him. Hey, bud, at certain times, you're not wrong, but at certain times, you need to peel that back. And at least when you're receiving advice, acknowledge you've received the advice. Don't just get the advice, put it into practice. Some people need to be stroked a little bit. And the chances are those people are not as evolved as they should be if they need that. But if you're a gatekeeper, just like sales, you've gotta take the person and meet them where they're at. And you can change a little bit, not compromise who you are, but you can peel back a little bit. I've had to in my career, right? I've had to do that. You've had to do that. We've had to we've had to temper who we are a little bit temporarily, and then we can introduce who we are because we don't want that getting in the way. There's some truists out there that would say, "Oh well, hey, I'm who I am, and like it or hate it, leave me, love." You know what, man? No, not if you're trying to meet. If you're truly of service and you're truly trying to make breakthroughs, you can be who you are, and you can also meet people where they are, and then you can both understand who each other is. But it's called common ground. And there's stoicism, and then there's just, "Hey, F you, man. I am who I am." And that's kind of where we are today with a lot of things, right? Like, my point of view versus your point of view, I'm being stoic, and blah, 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 blah. And that's where we're running into a little bit of trouble. I mean, I hate to bring these things up at the tail end of our broadcast here, but this is all food for thought for people, right? It's all food for thought for people. So, Jake, as we round about time, do you have 30-second coaching for anybody out there who wants to practice a little bit of stoicism?
Yeah, it's I would refer like I there was a whole lot of nowhere real quick, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
want to say
Great
that
answer.
yes, when you're being accused of being stoic, um, that may be an example for you to say, okay, it's all right for me to come out of my shell a little bit. People are wanting me to do that. A lot of
Mhm.
times, stoicism is misinterpreted for being an introvert, and usually it is the wildly gregarious extroverts that are going to point it out. To
There it is. Oh,
Mike's point of it's okay to still be authentic, be genuinely you, and come a little bit to where we can meet people where they are. That's absolutely true.
awesome. All right. Well, thank you, brother. Appreciate that. And that is our tidbit, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Total Disruption. Hit us up on socials if what you have been stimulated by, you had more questions. We're always out here. And for Dr. Jake Clendenning, I'm Mike Libercci. We'll see you next time on Total Disruption. Now it's your turn to disrupt.